Uh, Back in this vlogging business. Woo! So these next series of video blogs that I'll be posting on my channel are going to be about how the book of the previous 4 vlogs that I was summarizing, Man Gone Down by Michael Thomas. Where's the glare? Where is the glare? How the issues in there kind of combine or go with the biblical ethics that we've been talking about in class. So the 4 that I'm going to talk about is marriage, gender roles, racism, and sexuality. These are very hot topics. Yes! This video I'm going to talk about marriage and the views that our narrator, because he doesn't have a name. I think it's Cecil, but I'm dropping it. I'm dropping that. My intellectuality is burned into ashes, and I rise out like a phoenix into this new experience. I'm going to refer to him as the narrator. He begins talking. There's a huge issue with him and his wife, Claire, and stuff that they depend on each other about and talk, and there's like how their marriage works together. And that, I think, will lead more into the roles that they each take, not just in marriage, but then into more of the other, to the rest of their lives and stuff like that. So that'll be fun. So to recap, the narrator already has 3 children, 3 sons, 3 daughters, C, Z, and Eddie. C and Z are both males, and then Eddie is the youngest child. She's a girl. So and then Claire. So that's the immediate family. That's what's going on right here. So the narrator is a 35-year-old mixed-race man. He's black, white, and Native American. And has 3 children. The entire thing, the entire book, encapsulates the issue of him being able to provide for his family. That's a general rule. We'll get into that so much later because I don't want to talk about that right now because there's so much crap that he just goes through. I want to talk about the marriage, like what he sees is worthy of being in a marriage. He talks a lot about his dependency on his family and how he really wants to make it better for them. So the entire thing is like he's stressing and depressed and just like not accepting life because he's trying to provide for his family. So this whole thing is encapsulated by our narrator's desire to provide for his family.
Oh yeah, what the hell? Woo! Hell yeah, what the fuck?
He doesn't believe that he deserves his family, that he's not doing his part, because he wants marriage to be this thing where he doesn't want to raise his children the way in the family that the one that he was raised in. He really wants to get past the abandonment that his parents provided, like it was a gift. Like, I'm going to abandon you today. Accept it with all love and charity. Like, no. He didn't want his children to experience the same abandonment he did as a child. But when it comes 400 pages later, it ends up becoming the exact same thing. He ends up trying to cheat his way through the rest of his life so he's able to provide his children with private education and a roof over their heads, which is very contradictory to his whole intent. He doesn't want to become like his parents did, but yet he ends up doing it and justifies it by like, oh, or at least I provided for them and don't have them go through all these other emotional issues and blah. Ooh, this light is making me look white. And I just might go downstairs to a different light. Busted rhyme, Farfan in the... So overall, even in the conversations he has with people about his family, it seems that he kind of thinks of family as this idea of providing a way to live further, a way that is comfortable, a way that provides education and food and shelter. Well, in my biblical ethics class, we were discussing marriage in different ways. There's different types of biblical marriages in the Old Testament: a man and a woman, known as nuclear family; man and brother's widow, called Levirate marriage. That I don't. Man and wives and concubines, which we'll call an open marriage. There's a rapist and his victim, a man, a wife, and a wife's property, a male soldier and a prisoner of war, a man and a woman 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 and a woman, known as polygamy, a male slave and a female slave, those kind of all of them. But the first one I mentioned, the nuclear family, the nuclear family is the one that has really been carried over through all these different generations, from biblical times to even current society. So I want to unpack that. And so the verse that we went over is Genesis 2:2-4. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. This is how we kind of defined a nuclear marriage in our class. And inside this whole definition, that's all it's kind of established, is that there is a man and a woman and they become married, and that's it. The intent kind of behind it is, in many different sources, is that they get married so that they can have so they can procreate. But that's not always the case, because what about someone who is barren? Someone who can't procreate? Like, what's the point of them getting married? And whenever a woman wouldn't be able to was barren and wasn't able to provide any children or offspring, then it kind of led to the other marriages in the Old Testament, like what happened with Sarah and Abraham, and things. But there's a question though: is that right? Can, just because you can't provide children, does that mean that it's not a marriage and it's taken away from the ordinance of with God? But to continue on with biblical marriage, there are household codes which follow three basic relationships: household, husband and wives, parents and children, masters and slaves. I'm going to mainly talk about husband and wives and the parents and children. So the majority of families or households that happen in the ancient world were more like small economies, that each person had their own part to play and to making the household more valued and function and be able to provide. So they usually like these self-sustaining markets. I'm really bad at economy. Economics are just not my thing. I don't even, what are stocks? Like, what is that? But no, isn't that what you put on top of a fireplace? And it's stocking, but like, isn't that what's anyways? Whatever. That's what families would do. That's the function. That everyone kind of helps provide for each other, and they become more created as a unit. But in this book, it's just the father, just the narrator. He's the only one that, in the pressure is put on him by his wife, Claire, that you need to go find go find money for their tuition, for us to live, and for groceries. While you're figuring that out, I'm just gonna go to my mom's house and just chill over there and do whatever I want, spend money and time. Okay, Claire. Okay, I see what you're doing. Okay, you don't take any part in this. Whatever. I think that might create some controversy with what the Bible would say about their marriage or family, more so than that. But in Ephesians, when it discusses submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ, first of all, I don't even think Christ is involved in this marriage between narrator and Claire. I mean, he does mention that he was Catholic and kind of raised a little bit about understanding beliefs, but he really questions God. But I think in this marriage, they focus on themselves more than what God's part is in. So, like, in comparison to, let's say, Abraham and Sarah, that is like God is inside that relationship, that marriage. Like, he ordained this to happen, and he gives permission for these things to do whatever, and grants Sarah with a child at her age and all that jazz. But to continue on in Ephesians 5, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now that as the church submits to Christ, so also wives submit in everything to their husbands. Now this passage always has a lot to say. That women should just, fall under an obedience and everything they say and not be respected as much as a man. And I don't think that's what they're going for. And even if we did take it to that extreme, that Claire is supposed to be completely submitted to the narrator and just like obeying everything he says, he's still, it's almost like the reverse. Like he completely submitted to her. And I don't think that's wrong, but I don't think it's wrong that the man should take some responsibility. Or take some blame, but I think it's wrong that one person has to fully submit to the other. In Ephesians, it's when it says, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its savior. Christ has that power. Christ can do whatever he wants. God is this ultimate powerful being. Correction. Just provides so much protection in those who submit to him. So if we look at that as submitting to the head of the family, of the marriage, as submitting to Christ, just be able to rely on them for spiritual, eternal protection. So obviously, I decided to choose a different venue to video this because it was a lot easier, or I thought it was going to be easier. Yeah. The Kansas game's going on right now, and if it turns out the way that it is as it's going right now, we could be in the top 4. Just hoping Kansas beats TCU. So to put all of what's in Ephesians into the context of our narrator and Claire, it says towards the end of chapter 5, husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, have cleansed, blah blah blah. That probably shouldn't blah 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 the Bible. I mean, there's probably some unholiness to that, or blasphemy, or heresy. To continue, in the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, and this is the main issue. So already with the Bible and what we've talked about in class about marriage has already been conflicting with the marriage in the book. The wife is not involved in the family economy. The husband submitted to the wife instead of wife submitting to the husband, so the role kind of reversed, and the husband does not love his wife as he loves himself, arguably, because it says he who loves his wife loves himself, and that's not true. The entire time he's talking about how much he sucks, how much he hates himself, and how he goes into this depression like, I'm the worst person ever. I'm going to talk about for 400 pages. I mean, the author is kind of brilliant, that Michael Thomas, bless his soul. Praying for you, Michael. And I can't... So that's 3 parts. That's 3, like, how it goes against biblical ethics. But now putting into the current culture, like, it almost seems like the abandonment might be extreme, but almost necessary for the family to work out, for the marriage to work out. Actually, it wouldn't be married anymore, but like for the family to continue to be better, maybe. I don't think it's right, but I think that he should stay in the marriage and go to a doctor and get some prescription to help alleviate the depression, and then work on building up the marriage and the family. But then again, I'm Christian, and I don't believe in that divorce is ever a good thing unless there's huge reasonable cause, like multiple affairs. I even think that one affair could be, um, God has the power to forgive everything, anything He wants. It's up to what He tells him about the. Okay, I'm getting off track. I think he should stay with Claire, and at the end of the book, it kind of seems like he might, which is exciting but frustrating because the entire time it's like he's preparing us for him to leave his family after he provides for them. And so it's kind of confusing, and I really just don't know what to think about this man. Society would say, because we pretty much have veered off the course of holiness, way to go, America, and allowing divorce and just escaping issues be the solution to our problems. And they're still there. They're not, if you don't confront them and face them, then nothing's going to happen. If you continue to have these issues, then maybe it's time to go see a counselor. There are people that can help. And I also don't believe that.
Yeah, baby! Get the defense to high stick.
I also don't believe that another proof is that he doesn't go to God for any of this, and so it doesn't seem like God's involved in the marriage, which in biblical times, that's the only way that marriages were established. It was like a covenant between a man, woman, and God, specifically. And now definition of marriage is kind of excluding God and including many different genders. I don't know where I stand on that yet, or I don't think I ever will. But I'll talk about that more next, or towards the end of the videos when we talk about sexuality. But the society has altered its definitions and ideas of what marriage is, towards more lovey-dovey, and instead of thinking of it economically. So he should stay in this, even if he still seems emotionally attached to her, and with just that information, society would say, "Oh, then stay with her. Why jump something new?" But then he adds in the economic, like we're struggling, which the I think the Bible or in biblical times would still say, well, you're married to her and there's no getting out of it. Like, you made this commitment, so you have to stick to it. But now society would be like, oh, struggling financially, it's probably because you have too much on your plate. You should get rid of what's on your plate and focus on yourself so you can survive. Which is very selfish, and I think that's probably the biggest ethical issue is use of energy and time and resources on yourself versus others in the family. And if he decides to actually abandon his family, then he's going against his promise and his intention of not doing that to his children. Yeah, my father abandoned me. My sister and I had different fathers, and hers died. She's older. My sister and hers died when she turned 1, and then mine left whenever he found out my mom was pregnant with me. So it was intentional abandonment. It wasn't even secretive or sudden. It's like he said, "Nope, I don't want to be part of this," and he just jumped ship. So thinking about when I become a parent, if I become a parent, children right now, I can't even think, like, I graduate in a year and a half, and I don't even know what like, what's my life? Thinking about what I've already made a promise to myself that if I do have children, I'm not going. I will be around regardless of what happens, even if it requires certain sacrifices of location, money, and time. Like I can't. I don't want them to grow up without a father, because that's impacted me probably the most out of anything. Not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. So the fact that he's willing to allow his children to go through what he went through makes me think that he will most likely pursue even more selfish reason to just try to escape his problems through abandoning his family. And I don't think that's right. I think that narrator needs to find Jesus. 2, needs to evaluate his life. And 3, sticks with the marriage, sticks with the family. I mean, if it's rough, oh my goodness, not everything is easy in life, as he's obviously been writing or talking to us about in the last 400 pages. Yes, I'm still bitter that I had to read 400 freaking pages for this book. Dr. Whitlock, you were so right. I should have picked something shorter. And I do see like this issue coming up in my career as a social worker. And that's how I think I would address it. I would say, well, first let's get counseling, because you need help. You're depressed. I would do that evaluation, see if he's thinking of committing suicide, which I don't think he really was. I just think he's just really depressed, especially that he understands his awareness, or he's aware of his alcoholism, that that's a good strength of his. The things we have to point out are strengths, that you are aware and not going to pursue something that's going to tear you down. That's good. So let's build off that. And yeah, I think that's probably this is definitely a case that I probably would work as a social worker. And I would first recommend him to counseling, and then begin to prioritize needs of resources, for instance, a job as a means of income, and then another counselor for family therapy. Be able to work through that. But it's obvious that Claire is having some type of dominant issues. It's not really making herself seem like she should contribute. I'm like, woman, you're involved in this too. Just because it says in Ephesians that wives submit to your husbands does not mean that you are excused of any work. It's a functioning economic system that needs support from all its parties, especially those who are able to. Children can't do much, especially in our current society, because there's so many restrictions. Like, hey, can you go get milk from the goat and sell it in the market on town square? Like, that's not, we don't live in that time anymore. It's like, if you go to the ranch or the farm and go get milk from a goat and try to walk all the way to town square, you're gonna get killed, kidnapped, slaughtered. Like, these things would happen. So as a social worker, those would be parts of my steps that I would take to ensure that our narrator gets his issues taken care of. And I would figure out his name. I wouldn't just be like, oh, hey client, or hey narrator, or like, friend, how you doing? It just